When I started at the organization, I didn't show up with a dramatic plan for my career. I showed up hoping for something simpler, a workplace that felt steady, somewhere I could do good work, be treated normally, and go home without caring. The day in my body dot, it was a nonprofit, so I expected a certain kind of chaos-type budgets, too many meetings, and the constant sense that everyone was doing the work of 1.5 people. But I also expected heart. I wanted to believe the mission would attract decent people, or at least people who could disagree without turning it into a power struggle. My role was part-time fundraising, and I knew that would shape how people treated me, whether they admitted it or not. Fundraising is weird in that way. If money comes in, people love you. If money doesn't come in fast enough, they act like you're personally withholding it. And because I was part-time, there was also the quiet risk of becoming optional, not because I wasn't necessary, but because it's easy for busy people to forget to loop in the person who isn't always physically there. I told myself early on, stay organized, be clear. Don't assume people will remember you. It wasn't cynical. It was practical. I'd worked enough jobs to know that. Good intentions don't automatically become good communication. Jamie started not long after I did. She was full-time in administration, and at first she seemed easy to work with, confident, quick, and very sure of how things were normally done. We ended up sharing an office, which can go either way. You either become two people who quietly coexist, or you become two people locked in a daily test of patience. In the beginning, it was fine, actually more than fine. We settled into a rhythm. Most mornings I'd walk in, set down my bag, open my laptop, and she'd already be typing, coffee beside her, calendar pulled up like a command center. She'd glance over and say, "Morning." "Morning," I'd answer, and if it was Monday, I'd add, "How was your weekend?" Sometimes she'd shrug and say, "Too short," and we'd both laugh because that was always true. Sometimes she'd give me a quick update, went to dinner, saw family, got chores done. I'd do the same. It was light, normal, and it mattered. More than people think. A workplace can be exhausting even when no one is openly hostile. Warmth, even small warmth, can make the day feel survivable. Our team was small, 7 people, so everyone's personality mattered. In a small team, you can't hide behind distance. If someone's moody, you feel it. If someone's competitive, you feel it. If someone's insecure, you feel it. But at that stage, I didn't feel any of that from Jamie. She felt like a regular coworker, and I respected her work. Admin doesn't always get praise, but it's the scaffolding holding everything up. Jamie knew the internal systems, the templates, the routines. If I needed a form or an old file, she usually knew where to find it. If I asked who to contact for something, she had an answer. "Do you know where the old donor spreadsheet lives?" I asked her once, after digging through shared drives like I was on an archaeological expedition. Without looking up, she said, "Yeah, shared drive, development, then archives. It's labeled weirdly though. You'll want the one with final. In the title." I laughed. "Of course it is." She smirked. "This place runs on final. That was Jamie at first. Dry, competent, slightly sarcastic in a way that felt harmless. Fundraising work itself is a lot of quiet labor. You're writing, tracking, planning, following up, preparing reports, shaping language. You're managing relationships most people don't see. When things go well, everyone cheers. When things don't, you're expected to stay upbeat anyway. And because it's a nonprofit, you're often trying to make reality fit optimism without lying to anyone. I kept my head down and did the work. I didn't walk in acting like I knew everything. I listened more than I spoke. I tried to understand the organization's culture, what it valued publicly, what it valued privately, what kinds of communication got rewarded, what kinds got ignored. Over time, I started getting better at it. Not in a flashy way, just steadily. I got clearer about what was realistic in fundraising and what was wishful thinking. I got better at translating donor language into internal planning. I got more confident in meetings. I started to see the patterns, which projects inspired giving, which stories landed, which timelines were a fantasy dot, and other people started to notice. A program lead would email, "Can you review this before I send it?" A manager would ask, "Does this fundraising goal make sense?" Someone would say in a meeting, "Let's check with her, she'll know." Those moments were small, but they stacked. In a small organization, stacks become reputation fast. Began taking more initiative, mostly because the work required it. When you're the only fundraising person, you can't wait for perfect conditions. If you want results, you have to build the structure yourself. That's when the vibe with Jamie started changing. At first, it was subtle enough that I second-guessed myself. A shorter tone, a delayed response, a facial expression that didn't match what she said. Nothing you could report, nothing you could prove. Just a growing sense that she wasn't as comfortable with me as she used to be. One day, I mentioned a donor call that had gone well. Not bragging, just a normal update. "Oh, good," she said, eyes on her screen. Then after a beat, "So, are they actually giving or are they just talking?" It wasn't the question itself, it was the delivery. Like she was testing whether my good news was real enough to count. I brushed it off. "They're interested. Still early, but it's a good sign." She said. And then she changed the subject. Another time, someone complimented something I drafted. Jamie gave a tight little smile and said nothing. It wasn't dramatic, but it lodged in my mind because it felt intentional. I tried to be fair. People have bad days. People get burnt out. People have personal stuff going on. I didn't want to become paranoid or self-important. So I did what I usually do when something feels off. I looked for other explanations first. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she felt overloaded. Maybe she was dealing with something I didn't know about. But the pattern kept showing up, and then I noticed something I couldn't unsee. She wasn't like that with everyone. She could still laugh with other colleagues. She could still be helpful in a way that felt warm. She could still do casual conversation when she wanted. The coolness was selective. It showed up around me, especially when my work was visible. That's when the discomfort sharpened. Because selective coldness is different from general stress. Selective coldness has a target. I started replaying earlier months in my head, trying to understand what had changed. The obvious answer was that I wasn't new anymore. I wasn't tentative anymore. I wasn't quietly grateful anymore. I wasn't just part-time in my own mind. I was doing real work, doing it well, and taking up space. And I think Jamie didn't like the space I was taking up. One afternoon, I was working through a draft budget figure, and I said something like, "I think we need to be careful with this projection. We don't have enough data yet." Jamie didn't look at the document. She looked at me and said, "Well, we've always done it this way." The sentence was simple, but the message wasn't. It wasn't, "Let's discuss." It was, "This is not your place to change things." I kept my voice neutral. "Totally. I just want to make sure it's accurate." She gave me a quick smile that didn't feel friendly, right? After that, I started noticing how often she used, "We've always." Language. We've always done it this way. We've always handled it like this. It's a common phrase in workplaces, but it can mean different things. Sometimes it means, "Here's helpful context." Sometimes it means, "Don't challenge me." Slowly, without even deciding to, I began changing how I behaved around her. I shared less personal information. I made my emails clearer and more specific. I followed up in writing after conversations. I kept notes for myself about timelines and decisions. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. When communication starts feeling unpredictable, you start building your own stability. The shared office, which used to feel casual, started feeling like a place where I had to manage my presence. The silence didn't feel neutral anymore. It felt pointed. And inconsistency is exhausting because you never know if you're going to get normal Jamie or cold Jamie, helpful Jamie or dismissive Jamie. Sometimes she'd be perfectly fine for half an hour and then snap into that flat tone again. It made me feel like I was walking near a tripwire, and I kept thinking the same thing. We don't even have overlapping jobs. Fundraising wasn't her role. Admin wasn't mine. There wasn't a real reason for competition unless the competition wasn't about tasks, unless it was about status. That was the part that made it sink in. In small organizations, status can get weird. Titles matter less than access. Being full-time can matter more than being right. Being in the room can matter more than being responsible. And if someone is used to being the person who controls information, who decides what gets shared when and with whom, they can react badly when another person becomes influential. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want workplace drama. I wanted to do my job, contribute, and go home. But by the time I stopped doubting myself, the ease between us was gone. The friendliness had turned thin and conditional. I wasn't imagining it anymore. I was just watching it dot. Not long after that, the shift stopped being only about tone or vibe. It started showing up in real work, conversations I wasn't included in, decisions I hadn't been asked about, and fundraising-related details that I should have known but didn't. That's when I realized the situation wasn't just awkward. It was going to become a problem. Do you want chapter 2 to keep this same style, simple scenes plus reflective thoughts plus light dialogue, or make it sharper and faster paced as the conflict escalates? I can do chapter 2 in the same style and make it long form, but I can't guarantee an exact 40,004 word count in one message. If you want, I can deliver it in 2 parts that together land very close to 40,004, 4,000 words, and then fine-tune to your target. The first time I realized it wasn't just a vibe was the day I found out about a fundraising-related meeting after it had already happened. It wasn't announced in the general calendar. Nobody forwarded me notes. No one said, "Hey, sorry you missed it." I learned about it the way you learn about secrets. In an office, by overhearing a sentence that wasn't meant for you. Jamie was talking to someone near the printer. I wasn't trying to listen. I was just walking past with a folder in my hand. But I heard my own work mentioned, the donor pipeline, a possible sponsorship, a timeline, words that should have had my name attached to them. And then we agreed. The target should be higher, Jamie said. The other colleague nodded. So what's the plan? Jamie glanced at a paper and said, "We'll just move forward with it." I slowed down, then stopped. "Sorry, what meeting was that?" Jamie turned toward me with a calm face that didn't match the tight feeling. I immediately got in my chest. Oh, it was just a quick conversation. A quick conversation about fundraising targets? I asked, keeping my tone steady. She smiled slightly. It wasn't a big thing. That was one of her favorite moves. Minimize it until the only way to push back was to look unreasonable. If I insisted, I'd sound dramatic. If I let it go, it would happen again. I forced myself to stay neutral. If it's fundraising targets, I need to be included, even if it's quick. Sure, she said, as if she were agreeing to something trivial, like turning down the volume. Of course, later that afternoon, I sent a polite email. Clear subject line, simple language. No accusations. Hi, Jamie. Just a quick note, please include me in any meetings or conversations where fundraising numbers, projections, or donor outreach are discussed, so I can confirm accuracy and update our plans accordingly. Thanks. I hit send and told myself that was enough. Adults communicate. Adults correct small problems. Adults move on, but then it happened again. Not the exact same way, never the exact same way. Always slightly different, so it could be explained away. A meeting moved last minute and oops, sorry. A conversation happened in the moment. A calendar invite must not have gone through. Notes weren't written up. It was always something odd at first. I tried to stay practical. Maybe there really were scheduling mishaps. Maybe people were rushed. Maybe the organization was disorganized, but the pattern had a shape. And the shape was my absence. It wasn't just that I wasn't invited. It was that the conversations were happening with someone who didn't have fundraising expertise and who didn't need to be central to them. Jamie wasn't the one tasked with raising money, but she was acting like the gate between me and the information I needed to do my job. The most frustrating part was that it wasn't loud. It wasn't openly hostile. It was quiet and procedural, like death by paperwork, and because it was quiet, I started second-guessing myself again. I'd sit at my desk and think, am I being too sensitive? Is this just messy office communication? Maybe she really forgot. Maybe I'm reading into it. Then the next incident would happen, and that doubt would burn off like fog. 1 week, I went into a team meeting expecting to review the fundraising plan for the next quarter. I had notes. I had a draft timeline. I had a list of donors to prioritize. The agenda had fundraising update on it, so I assumed it would be a normal discussion. Instead, Jamie started talking, not generally specifically. She spoke about projected revenue, possible sponsorships, and expected donations with the kind of confidence that makes other people stop asking questions. If you say something like, it's already been decided, people accept it as fact. She referred to numbers I hadn't seen. She referenced a conversation I hadn't been in. She even said, we've been discussing the best way to approach this. And I remember sitting there thinking, who is we? I waited for a pause, then kept my voice calm. Can I ask where those numbers came from? I haven't seen that projection yet. Jamie's eyes flicked to me. It's just an estimate. Okay, I said, still calm. But we should make sure the estimate is grounded in our current pipeline. I can pull up what we actually have in progress. One of my colleagues looked relieved, like they had been uncomfortable with the certainty in Jamie's tone, but didn't know how to question it. Someone else nodded. Yeah, that would be helpful. Jamie leaned back slightly and gave a small smile. Sure, if you want. The sentence sounded polite, but it carried something else. You're being difficult. You're being extra. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I pulled up my spreadsheet and walked through the actual status. I didn't embarrass her. I didn't say, that's wrong. I framed it as clarification, as alignment, as shared planning, that I could feel her watching me, not listening, watching. After the meeting, she didn't say anything to me directly. No, good catch. No, let's sync. No, I didn't realize. Just a cool silence as we walked back to the office. Later, back at our desks, I said lightly, hey, for next time, just loop me in if you're talking about projections. With anyone, it'll save time. Jamie kept typing. Yeah, that was it. One syllable, no eye contact. I stared at my screen for a moment, longer than necessary, then turned back to my work. I felt the beginning of something in my chest. Anger, yes, but also that sharper feeling of being deliberately disrespected. Still, I tried to handle it like a professional adult. I sent another email a few days later, even more specific. Hi, Jamie, just flagging again that I need to be included in fundraising-related planning conversations, especially those involving projected revenue and budgets. Please add me to the invites going forward. Thank you. No drama, no emotion. Just clarity. She did it once. Then she stopped, and that's when I stopped thinking it was forgetfulness. because forgetfulness doesn't selectively repeat. Forgetfulness doesn't always land the same way, always with the same person left out, always in the same domain. Forgetfulness doesn't come with that faint smile, that tone that says you're being annoying for asking to do your job. It felt strategic. And the more it happened, the more I felt myself shrinking in ways I hated. I'd open my mouth in meetings and hesitate for half a second, wondering if she was going to twist what I said. I'd write emails and reread them 3 times, trying to remove anything that could be interpreted as criticism. I'd find myself thinking about her reactions more than the actual work. That's how workplace dynamics steal your energy. Not with explosions, but with constant calculation. It didn't help that our organization didn't have much structure. For dealing with interpersonal conflict, the boss was the kind of leader who preferred the illusion of calm to the reality of accountability. They'd rather tell you to work it out than address a pattern that might require effort. And HR, if it existed, was more of a concept than a function. So I knew I couldn't rely on a formal process to fix this. If I wanted things to change, I'd have to manage it myself. One afternoon, I decided to talk to Jamie directly. Not a confrontation, just a clear, calm conversation. I waited until we were alone in the office. She was sorting papers, stacking them into neat piles. I stood near my desk, hands loosely at my sides, and said, "Hey, can we talk for a second?" She didn't look up. "About what?" "Fundraising meetings," I said. "I'm noticing I'm not always being looped in, and it's causing problems. If numbers are being discussed, I have to be in the room." She looked at me then. "I've included you." "Sometimes," I said carefully, "but not consistently. Like the meeting earlier this week, I didn't know it was happening until after." Jamie's mouth tightened. "It was last minute." "Okay," I said. "Even then, a quick message is enough." She gave a small shrug. "I can't always remember everything." I didn't take the bait. "I didn't say, but you remember everything else." I didn't say, "You're an admin, you literally remember everything." I kept my voice steady. "Then we should set it up so you don't have to remember. If a meeting includes fundraising topics, just add me by default." Jamie looked away as if the conversation bored her. "Fine." The word "fine" wasn't agreement. It was dismissal. After that, I expected some improvement, even if it was grudging. But instead, the dynamic shifted into something even more irritating. She would include me just enough to cover herself, but still keep me out of the real conversations. I'd be invited to a meeting where the decisions had already been made. I'd receive an email chain after the key part was over, tagged with FYI, like I was a spectator. I'd be asked to confirm numbers that were already being presented as settled in meetings. She started using a particular tone when she referenced fundraising, lightly authoritative, slightly patronizing, as if she were briefing a child. "Wow. The fundraising side is..." She'd begin, and then she'd fill the space with assumptions. Sometimes I could correct it gently and keep the room on track. Sometimes I couldn't, because correcting her too often made me look like the difficult one, even though she was the one speaking out of her lane. It was a trap. If I stayed silent, misinformation became truth. If I spoke up, I became the problem. The budget was where it became impossible to ignore. Budgets in nonprofits aren't just numbers, they're promises. They determine staffing, programming, and expectations. If the budget assumes money that isn't likely to come in, the organization ends up scrambling later, cutting corners, or quietly blaming the people who didn't deliver. When we started working on the next cycle's budget, I asked to review the fundraising projections early. Not because I wanted control, but because I knew how quickly unrealistic numbers could harden into the plan. Jamie sent over a draft, opened it and stared at it for a few seconds, genuinely thinking I must be missing context. The fundraising line was inflated wildly. It wasn't a hopeful stretch, it was a fantasy. And it wasn't even a fantasy based on a pipeline. It was just a big number, sitting there like it belonged. I walked into her office area and said, "Hey, quick question, where did the fundraising projection number come from?" Jamie didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. "It's what we need." I blinked, right? But it needs to reflect what's realistic. We don't have commitments that support that number. She leaned back in her chair. "We can't put a low number. It looks bad." I kept my voice calm. "If we put a high number and don't hit it, that looks worse. I can give you a range based on our pipeline, and then we can set a stretch goal." Separately, she waved a hand as if swatting a fly. "We'll see." That "we'll see" became another one of her phrases. It sounded neutral, but it meant I'm not taking you seriously. I went back to my desk and tried to decide what to do. Correcting the budget wasn't optional. It was part of protecting the organization. But pushing too hard would create open conflict, and I didn't have much formal power. I was still part-time, she was full-time. She had closer access to internal leadership conversations. She could frame me as negative or difficult if she wanted. I did the only thing I could do. I put my feedback in writing, clearly and professionally, and I attached supporting data. "Hi, Jamie, I reviewed the draft budget. The fundraising projection currently listed is significantly above our current pipeline and historical performance. Based on current commitments and realistic projections, a more accurate range would be XY. I recommend we budget at Y and note an aspirational stretch goal separately." "Happy to discuss." I kept it clean. No accusation. "Just facts." Jamie didn't reply. She didn't acknowledge it. Days passed. Then the budget draft circulated again unchanged. That was when my stomach sank in that very specific way it does when someone is telling you, without words, that your expertise doesn't matter. I felt anger, but it was a controlled anger. The kind that comes with clarity. Because by that point, I understood this wasn't an accident. This wasn't disorganization. This wasn't busy. This was someone choosing to ignore me in the areas where I was responsible. And if someone is willing to ignore your expertise while using your domain to make themselves look competent, they'll keep doing it as long as it works. The next staff meeting was the one I still remember most clearly, because it was the moment her behavior crossed from frustrating to personal. We were in the conference room. People had coffees and notebooks. The mood was typical, half focused, half tired. The usual nonprofit meeting energy where everyone is thinking about the work they should be doing instead of sitting there. Jamie started speaking about fundraising again. She threw out a number big, confident, and wrong. Not just slightly off. Wrong in a way that could mislead everyone in the room. I felt that split-second decision inside myself. Stay quiet to avoid conflict, or correct it to protect the work. I corrected it gently. I kept my voice even and respectful. Just to clarify, we're still in discussion about those numbers, so they may shift. The room didn't react dramatically. A couple people nodded. Someone wrote something down. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a normal, professional clarification, but Jamie turned her head toward me with a sharp expression-tight mouth, narrowed eyes like I'd insulted her. Then she leaned slightly toward me and whispered something rude under her breath. Low. Enough that no one else could hear, but clear enough that I did. My face stayed still. I didn't react. I didn't give her the satisfaction, but inside something clicked into place because that wasn't stress. That wasn't oops. That wasn't disorganization. That was contempt, and contempt is a choice. I sat through the rest of the meeting with the same calm expression, answering questions when needed, taking notes like normal. From the outside, I looked fine. But inside, I felt the shift from maybe this it can be managed. This is not going to improve. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and stared at my inbox. A few emails came in. I answered them. I kept working, but the mental space changed. It wasn't just that I was annoyed. It was that I no longer trusted her, and once you don't trust someone at work, everything becomes heavier. Every interaction becomes a calculation. Every request becomes a risk. Every meeting becomes something you have to prepare for emotionally, not just professionally. That afternoon, Jamie acted like nothing had happened. She typed, she printed, she chatted lightly with someone in the hallway. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge it. She didn't even avoid me. She behaved like she'd whispered something cruel to me the same way someone might mutter about the weather automatic. Casual, forgettable. I remember thinking, so this is who she is when she thinks she has power. And then the thought that had been hovering for weeks finally became a decision. I started looking for a new job, not in a dramatic way. Not with a big speech, quietly, practically. I updated my resume. I opened my laptop at night and searched postings. I told myself I didn't have to leave tomorrow, that I needed an exit plan, because even if I could tolerate the tension, I couldn't tolerate what it was doing to my work. I couldn't do fundraising well while being blocked from information and forced to constantly correct misinformation that shouldn't have been said in the first place. And I couldn't keep pretending that a calm tone and good intentions would change someone who used disrespect as a tool. Once I made the decision to look, something in me settled, not in a happy way, more like the kind of calm you feel when you finally admit the truth. I wasn't going to solve Jamie. I wasn't going to find the perfect wording that suddenly made her respectful. I wasn't going to out-professional someone who was committed to being petty behind a polite face. So I stopped trying to fix the relationship and I started trying to protect myself. That protection looked boring from the outside. I kept doing my job. I showed up on time. I responded to emails and at deadlines. I didn't vent to coworkers. I didn't start a gossip campaign. I didn't become cold or hostile, but inside I was running two tracks at once. The track of doing my work and the track of preparing to leave at home. I updated my resume in quiet increments, like I was packing a suitcase without wanting anyone to notice the bags by the door. One night I'd fix bullet points. Another night I'd rewrite my summary. Another night I'd remove an outdated line and add something more accurate. I reread old performance notes and tried to translate nonprofit chaos into language employers would understand. That's always the weird part, turning I held everything together with limited resources into something that sounds clean and impressive. During the day, I became careful in ways I hadn't been before. I started keeping more records. If I had a conversation with Jamie about fundraising numbers or a deadline, I'd send a short follow-up email afterward, just confirming we agreed on X by Friday. Not dramatic, just clear. If she ignored an email that mattered, I'd forward it again, polite, direct, and unemotional. Hi, Jamie. Following up on this, please confirm you've seen it. Sometimes she'd reply with one word, seen. Number. Answer to the actual request. No confirmation of the action needed. Just seen, like she was doing me a favor by acknowledging that my email existed. I learned quickly that if I asked her a question, she was more likely to respond than if I gave her a directive. A question allowed her to feel in control. A directive made her feel challenged. So I adjusted my language, not because she deserved it, but because I had work to do. Instead of, please update the budget line to reflect the revised projection, I'd write, can you update the budget line to reflect the revised projection? It was annoying to have to baby someone's ego, but I reminded myself I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for the organization and for my own sanity until I could leave. The strange thing was that The more I emotionally stepped back, the more I could see her patterns clearly. Jamie wasn't constantly rude. She didn't yell. She didn't insult me out loud. She didn't do anything that would look obvious to someone who only saw the surface. She did something more slippery. She controlled access, withheld information, and acted like my role was optional. In meetings, she'd speak about fundraising as if she were summarizing something she understood deeply, even when she was wrong. She'd present numbers with confidence because confidence fills space. And when I corrected her, even gently, she acted like I was being difficult rather than accurate. Once, after a meeting where I clarified something she'd misstated, she walked back to the office in silence and then said casually, "You don't need to contradict me in front of everyone." This sentence was quiet, but the entitlement in it was loud. I kept my face neutral. "I wasn't contradicting you. I was clarifying the numbers." She made a small sound that was almost a laugh. Whatever. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, hands steady, heart slightly racing. I'd learned by then that reacting was a trap. She wanted a reaction. A reaction would justify her narrative that I was the problem. So I didn't give it to her. I started treating her the way you treat an unstable stare, carefully, with no extra weight, no unnecessary risk. At the same time, the rest of my work continued. Donors still needed follow-ups. Proposals still needed writing. Reports still needed compiling. And in those areas, I felt competent and clear. Fundraising was where I could breathe because the work itself made sense, even when the environment didn't. The hardest part was the budget. Jamie's inflated numbers didn't just irritate me, they threatened to create real consequences. If leadership accepted those projections as real, then program plans would be built on money that wasn't guaranteed. When that money didn't show up, people would panic. Then someone would look around for blame, and fundraisers are often convenient. Blamed out, so I kept pushing carefully. I sent another email, attaching the same data in a slightly different format, hoping clarity would make it undeniable. "Hi, Jamie." Attaching revised projections based on current pipeline and historical performance. "These are the numbers we can reasonably budget against. Please update the draft accordingly." No reply. A week later, a new draft of the budget circulated again, and the numbers were still there, high, shiny, wrong. It felt like she was daring me to stop her. I considered escalating. I considered going to our boss, but our boss was the kind of person who hated conflict and loved plausible deniability. They'd ask, "Have you talked to her about it?" Even if you talked to her 10 times, they'd say, "I'm sure she didn't mean it," even when a pattern was obvious. They'd suggest we all communicate better, like the problem was tone instead of behavior, and because I was part-time, I knew the risk. If I made noise and the boss didn't support me, I'd be labeled difficult. Jamie would be labeled strong-willed. The situation would get worse, not better. So I stayed strategic. I started looping in others only when it was necessary, when something could genuinely harm the organization. Not as a complaint, but as information. For example, I'd reply to a budget thread and include the program lead who relied on the numbers. "Hi, all just flagging that the fundraising projection listed is above our current pipeline. I recommend budgeting at X based on existing commitments. Happy to share details." That way, I wasn't telling on Jamie. I was protecting the work in a way that was visible and professional. Jamie hated that. I could feel it. She didn't say it directly, but her body language changed. Her jaw tightened. Her movements became sharper, like she was trying to communicate irritation without words. One afternoon, after I sent one of those emails, she walked into the office, set a stack of papers down, and said, "You really like copying everyone, don't you?" I kept my voice calm. I copy people when the information affects their planning. She gave a thin smile. Right? Then she sat down and started typing loudly. Not yelling, just aggressively tapping keys. Like her anger had to go somewhere. That was the month my job search became more serious. I started applying. Quietly, at night. Sometimes early in the morning. I'd submit an application and then go to work like nothing happened. I told myself that leaving didn't mean I failed. Leaving meant I respected myself enough not to normalize being treated like I was disposable. But even with that clarity, it wasn't emotionally simple. There's grief in realizing a place that once felt workable is becoming hostile. There's grief in accepting that someone you were friendly with isn't simply having a bad week. There's grief in understanding that the friendliness was conditional and that the condition was you staying small. There's also a weird kind of embarrassment, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because part of me wished I'd seen it earlier. Part of me wished I hadn't been so generous in my interpretations. I didn't like that I'd spent months trying to preserve a normal dynamic with someone who wasn't playing the same game. Still, I stayed professional. That was my rule. No matter what she did, I would not become her. I wouldn't whisper insults. I wouldn't undermine her. I wouldn't sabotage her. I'd protect the work, protect my reputation, and protect my peace the best I could. And for a while, that approach worked, at least in the sense that I survived the days. Then one thing happened that made it harder. Jamie began acting overly helpful at random times, like she was trying to reset the narrative without changing the behavior. She'd be dismissive for days and then suddenly offer a bright, sugary friendliness in the hallway. Hey, how was your weekend? She'd ask, too cheerful. It was good. I'd answer, neutral. Oh, nice. Did you do anything fun? She'd press, smiling. Sometimes I'd give a vague answer. Just relaxed, caught up on things. Love that, she'd say, like we were close. Then, later the same day, she'd ignore an email about a fundraising deadline. That inconsistency made me feel like she wasn't trying to repair anything. She was trying to control the atmosphere. If she could sprinkle friendliness on top, then she could keep doing what she was doing while appearing nice to anyone watching. It was the workplace version of gaslighting light. Behave badly, then act friendly, then imply you're the unreasonable one if you're not warm back. I stopped giving her anything personal. I stayed polite and brief. I didn't argue with her. I didn't explain myself. I didn't defend my tone. I just kept moving. Around this time, I started noticing how my body reacted to the office on Sunday nights. I'd feel tension in my shoulders before I even opened my laptop. On some mornings, I'd sit in my car for a moment longer than necessary before walking inside. It wasn't dread exactly, it was vigilance. The feeling of preparing to manage someone else's unpredictable behavior. It bothered me because I liked the actual work. I liked fundraising. I liked the mission. I liked many of my coworkers. I didn't want one person to poison my experience, but one person can poison a lot in a small organization. One day, I was in the break area making tea when another coworker mentioned something about a donor outreach plan. Oh, are we doing that appeal next month? They asked. I blinked. What appeal? They looked confused. Jamie said you were planning it. I felt my stomach drop. Not because the appeal itself was a problem, I could plan an appeal, but because this was another example of her talking about my work as if she controlled it and announcing decisions without involving me. I kept my face neutral. I haven't seen anything confirmed yet. I'll follow up. When I returned to my desk, I emailed Jamie. Hi Jamie, I heard mention of a donor appeal next month. Can you forward me whatever notes or decisions have been made so I can plan accordingly? No reply. The next day, she walked into the office and said casually, oh yeah, we might do something. Nothing said. I looked at her. Okay, then. Please don't tell people it's planned if it isn't. She gave me that tight smile again. I didn't. And there it was, the denial. The small lie. The refusal to be accountable, even for something minor. It wasn't about the appeal. It was about control. She wanted to be the person who knew what was happening, even if that meant inventing certainty and letting me clean up the confusion later. That night, I applied to 3 more jobs. I also started thinking ahead. If I left, I wanted my work to be easy to hand off, not for Jamie's benefit, but for the organization's. So I organized files, clarified notes, and cleaned up my tracking documents. It was partly professionalism, partly self-respect. I didn't want the end of my time there if it came to be messy, and then, just when I had fully accepted the idea that I would probably leave, the organization had a staffing problem. A full-time person on a different team had to take medical leave. It wasn't a small absence. It was sudden and serious enough that the organization needed coverage quickly. People started asking quietly, how are we going to manage this? I remember hearing about it and feeling 2 things at once. First, sympathy. Medical leave means someone is dealing with something real. Second, that practical nonprofit reality work doesn't stop. The organization would have to figure it out. I also remember a third thought, quieter and more self-focused. This could change things. Not in a scheming way, just in the way opportunities sometimes appear when organizations are forced to adapt. When someone leaves temporarily, the usual routines break. People who were boxed into certain roles suddenly get asked to stretch. I didn't know then what would happen. I didn't know it would lead to a promotion. I didn't know my whole work life was about to shift. I just knew the organization was about to scramble, and I had a choice. Stay in my corner, quietly job searching, or step forward. At that point, I was tired of being treated like I was optional. So I did what I always do when something matters. I raised my hand. I told them I could cover some of the work, and the moment I said it, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while at that job, solid ground under my feet. Because whatever Jamie thought of me, whatever she tried to do with her little power games, my actual strength at work had never been the office politics. It had been my willingness to step up and deliver. The situation changed when a full-time employee from another team took medical leave. The leave was sudden and required immediate operational coverage. While the organization expressed appropriate concern for the employee's health, it also faced a practical challenge. Essential work would continue, and responsibilities would need to be reassigned quickly. In response, I offered to assume a portion of the employee's duties on a temporary basis. The organization accepted my offer and authorized me to begin providing coverage. What initially began as limited support expanded over time as the scope of the absent employee's responsibilities became clearer. I approached the transition methodically by reviewing relevant files, clarifying timelines, identifying dependencies across teams, and establishing an organized workflow to maintain continuity. During this period, my work became more visible across the organization. I collaborated with multiple colleagues outside my usual fundraising responsibilities and was included in discussions and coordination efforts that were not previously part of my role. This exposure also reduced my reliance on indirect communication channels and enabled more consistent access to information necessary for effective performance. As the employee's absence continued, organizational leadership indicated that a longer-term staffing solution would be required. I was asked to consider applying for the full-time position. Following additional discussion, the organization offered me the role. The organization also permitted me to revise the position's job description to reflect operational needs and my demonstrated capabilities. This revised scope allowed me to retain a portion of my fundraising responsibilities in addition to the role's broader functions. To support the expanded workload, leadership approved an assistant position, and I participated in developing the assistant's job description, interviewing candidates, and making a final hiring decision. The assistant ultimately selected proved highly capable, reliable, and well-suited to the role. In connection with the promotion, I was assigned a private office. While this was a practical change in workspace, it also provided a more stable environment for focused work and reduced unnecessary exposure to unproductive interpersonal dynamics. Following the promotion, my working relationship with Jamie changed noticeably. She became more reserved in routine interactions, offering minimal greetings and limited engagement. I responded by maintaining a consistently professional posture. I limited communication to operational needs, avoided unnecessary personal conversation, and ensured that work-related exchanges were clear, objective, and appropriately documented. This approach was not intended to create conflict. Rather, it reflected a decision to establish and maintain professional boundaries in response to prior conduct that had interfered with my ability to perform fundraising responsibilities effectively. Over time, Jamie attempted to reintroduce a more familiar tone through increased friendliness and heightened enthusiasm regarding minor fundraising developments. I acknowledged such updates courteously without adopting a personal or informal style. In written communication, I also adjusted my tone to remain neutral and businesslike, emphasizing clarity and professionalism over familiarity. When I required action from Jamie on operational matters, I found it most effective to request explicit confirmation and to communicate in a manner that minimized ambiguity. When responses were not provided, I followed up in writing and, where necessary, ensured that relevant stakeholders were included to prevent delays or misunderstandings. In meetings, I continued to collaborate constructively, focusing on accuracy and outcomes rather than interpersonal friction. As the organization adjusted to my expanded responsibilities, the informal power dynamics that had previously affected my work diminished. My role now included broader authority and visibility, which improved my ability to ensure accurate fundraising planning and maintain consistent processes. Most importantly, the changes allowed me to perform my work without being dependent on inconsistent cooperation from colleagues outside my area of expertise. The experience reinforced a key professional lesson: sustained competence, clear communication, and firm boundaries can be more effective than direct confrontation in correcting unhealthy workplace dynamics. I did not seek to undermine any colleague. I simply maintained an appropriate professional distance and focused on delivering results. Ultimately, the organization recognized my capacity and entrusted me with greater responsibility, and I proceeded in the role with a stable and structured approach.